Welcome back to Real Talks One podcast. Today, the day of 4th of July is the Independence Day here in the US. It has been over 250 years since USA was declared independent, and it's very imperative that we discuss about the freedom which is provided by Article One in the U.S. Really go under and understand. Do we think independently? Are we really having freedom? Are we practicing it? What does the political scene look like here in the US? And as always, I'd like to do a contrast with India as well. So all my conversations will have an India angle because I am from Indian origin, and there are a lot of similarities in India and US politics, as well as there are a lot of differences, and it's important to see it from that context. So first of all, a happy 4th of July to everyone, whoever is watching this right now. And it goes without saying that USA is land of opportunities. A lot of immigrants, including myself, moved here for a better life, and we are enjoying those things. But having as a part of freedom, it is also important to critically evaluate things that are doing well, things that can be improved. Similarly, I do that for India as well. So, US elections are in full swing right now. We have two primary contestants, Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden. Both of them have been a president at least for one term, and both of them are fighting for the second term, actually. So, Biden is the current running president, whereas Trump was the previous one. So, if you would have seen some of the debates that has happened between Trump and Biden, you would find that both of them do not kind of represent the true American spirit. And why I say that is, I'll illustrate a couple of points out here that will make it abundantly clear that both of these choices that have been presented before us are actually non-starters. So both the gentlemen are quite old. One is 78 and other is like late 70s and the other is early 80s. And Trump invariably calls Biden as old while they are like basically almost similar age, right? And it is like unfair because there are a lot of more intelligent and much younger people out there in the US, much more qualified, much better speakers, etc., who could be more like 50s or maybe 40s or even in their 60s. But here we have people probably on their last leg, not in the best of their health, name calling each other. Secondly, you might have seen multiple times now that Biden right now has difficulty in even like retaining his composure. Aging is actually showing up upon him. He seems to like lose thoughts. He tends to stutter from time to time, and he is not able to represent the American public really well. So it's unfortunate in such he represents Democratic Party, which has so many qualified people, such a great lineup of folks. Still, Biden is like contesting and is going ahead with the nomination and the elections. On the other hand, if you see, you have Trump, who has bankrupted his company, who has been convicted couple of times. One after the other, he has had so many interesting kind of allegations against him, and still he's basically going ahead with the elections. Um, so, if you think from a perspective of who do you basically vote for, actually, like India, there is actually no choice. Like, not even one of them is actually worth your vote. So it's a total waste of time. And this is what America has presented in front of you. So, Democratic Party today represents the far left, or as they call it, as woke people, and Trump's party represents the far right, the Republican people, who are also sometimes considered as party of MAGA or rednecks or more fundamentalist folks, right? They are the very people who kind of pass the law that women do not have rights over their own body, and once they have a pregnancy they cannot terminate it, which is very unfortunate because it's better if you do not have caring and loving parents, then there is no point of bringing that child into being, because they will never be getting that kind of affection and love which parents who really care for the children do. So it's better to not have those pregnancies if you are not going to take care of the children. But again, that's my opinion. Apparently, the Republican Party doesn't agree with that, so that's not gonna fly. On the similar light, on the Democratic Party side, they tend to kind of do a lot of politics around identity in terms of like LGBTQ and gender rights and gender fluidity. And I again disagree with this as well. Not in perspective of like somebody can be transgender or somebody can be queer and all. That's a okay. Like you can be whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, and it's okay with me. But polluting the like minds of children like who are as young as preteens, etc. Nowadays in democratic states such as New York, California, Washington, etc., you would see that school children are being fed such kind of woke policies where they can be confused about their genders and their gender identities, and they can actually go for sex transformation operations at the cost of the school or their insurance companies that they have, without even letting their parents know or taking their consent. Those kind of things have started happening here in the US. This is completely uh, forcing the children to like focus rather than focusing on studies and building critical thinking abilities. They're experimenting with bodies, and they're experimenting with some kind of fentanyls and new kind of drugs, and now with this another kind of gender fluidity and sex transition operations and things along those lines. So this is one of the worst things that has happened, and mostly you will see this happening in the democratic states, as I talked about, which are the states which have the tech sector as well, like as a child, right? New York, Washington, and California are number one in these areas. So if you see, there is no scope for person who is like centrist like myself, because there are ills in both the parties. I dislike both the candidates. Trump because he's a habitual liar, he's a U-turner, doesn't represent the office really well, and he's very corrupt. Similarly, on the other hand, Biden is unfit. He stutters. He cannot speak a coherent sentence, and in addition to that his own son has been you know like most likely Hunter Biden has been conspired to have done dealings on corruption charges and things along those lines. So he's no saint either, but he's at least a little bit refined than Trump. But then Biden also came out with the policy that in the next term, if he wins, he is going to tax the highest tax percentage to people, families who are making over 400K. Uh, that's also like ridiculous right now, because as you would see, due to inflation, a lot of states, especially the West Coast and the New York, like especially California and Washington, as well as New York, uh, like if you are making 200 or 250K as a family, you're basically just surviving by, because the rentals, the food inflation, the income tax, the insurance rates are extremely high here in the US. So at best, with 400K, you are like an upper middle class, but by no means you are like doing extremely well for yourself. So I don't think highest tax bracket should be uh, awarded to 400K. So that policy also I don't like. Many of the software engineers will not like it either. But that's the case, right? So think about this, right? Both Republican and Democratic parties that are here in the US are good for not a good fit for the 21st century US in which we are dealing. Both the parties do not have like a solution for the impeding recession that we are going through, the inflation that is happening. They have just like outsourced that job to the Fed. Fed continues to keep raising the interest rates in the hope that it will cut down the inflation, and magically it will like resolve the all the layoffs and all those things that are happening. As we know, like layoffs are still continuing, We're already in the second half of the year 2024. We have started July. And still every day, even this week also, there were a ton of layoffs. I'll probably make another video covering some of the layoffs that were just recently announced across the board, right? And housing market situation is also deteriorating, primarily in the southern states of Florida and Texas and Tennessee and Arizona, where we're already seeing 25 to 30% decline in the home values, which will be equivalent to a crash actually. But even in the west coast side of California and Washington, there are certain homes that are now sitting for several weeks, whereas just 2 years ago situation was completely different, wherein every home would sell within the 1 week of listing, and it will have multiple bids, and it will go at least 100, 200, 300K over the list price. And now we are in a completely opposite situation. So, if you look at this one now, comparing it with India, India just concluded their election where Modi has won this time again. India doesn't have a concept of right wing and left wing, and pretty much every party in India is a socialist party because they all do welfares, right? Many people think Modi is right wing, but I don't think so. That's the case. Modi is also kind of socialist with some right leaning, you can say, ideologies. And Congress is also very socialist with some left leaning ideologies. But that's where it is. None of them are pure left or none of them are pure right in the true sense as it is in the West or in the US. And as you would see, India is also multi-party system, so there is no concept of just two parties. Even though Congress and BJP happen to be the largest single parties, but at least in the US, like back in the day, around 2009, 2008, Tea Party became a big deal, but I don't think it ever became a proper like a party. They were supporting the Republicans and all, and they kind of merged in that. And since then, I have never heard about the Tea Party. Actually, that was a time almost 10, 12 years ago when they came into the picture, and now we don't hear about them at all. So it's fundamentally two parties, which is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, as we know it in the US. But India is a multi-party system. Though, as you would see, the Indian elections are also now more like presidential elections. They are run on the face of Modi or Raga on the other end. Similar way, like US are in true sense presidential elections because you directly choose the president, not necessarily the party, and then the party basically chooses the president. So in that sense, even though India is not supposed to be presidential form of government, but the elections are run in such a fashion, and that is why you would see that this time around when BJP did not cross 400, which is what the target they had given to their party members. People are now putting like Modi down, saying that hey, Modi was supposed to be the winning machine for BJP. What happened this time? Where is the Modi magic? Where is the Modi wave? Right? I think the important point to note is that had it not been a Modi magic and Modi wave, then coming back to power three times in a row is a very, very big deal. In fact, in the whole of India's independent history, Modi will be the second prime minister after Nehru who has won consecutive elections three times in a row. So it's a kind of a record by itself because the only one person who was able to do that was Jawaharlal Nehru at the time of independence. Situation was different at that time. They had not much more power. There were no much alternatives at that point of time, and to do that then was relatively, I would say, easier. But Modi has done it again and made history. And even though the tally has come down, but there is definitely some magic to Modi for sure, even if it is not at the same level it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. But nonetheless, there is still some magic left, and that is why they still won. But at the end of the day, as I'm saying, politics everywhere, whether it is in the US or in India, is just a bad place to be. They're literally extremely corrupt. They all do U-turns. They have no moral compass, no matter whether we are talking about US or in India. But the major difference is that US one is a very, very low population country. India, on the other hand, is extremely populous. So the constraint on resources in India is extremely high, whereas resources in the US are very, very abundant. Then US has been independent for over 250 years, whereas India is still young at like 75 years. So from that perspective, what has happened is that a lot of the basic infrastructure, the systems, the policies are already in place in the US. So for the common people, day-to-day activities and day-to-day life runs rather smoothly here in the US. Well, in India, that itself is a big ordeal. Whether we are talking about pollution, corruption, or congestion in the Indian cities, it's just third world actually. Like that's the right word to call it out. So only countries such as sub-Saharan countries in Africa or other nations along those lines, their quality of life would basically mimic some of the quality of life that has we have in India. I mean, it may not be as bad, but at least some pockets in India would be actually equivalent to the African countries. In fact, if you compare with Asia as well, India is not even in the top, infrastructure as compared to like Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand. So our infrastructure doesn't even match these countries. We are probably in similar line to like Bangladesh and Pakistan, India, even China. We can't meet it because China is also way ahead of us as far as the infrastructure and the processes and the road quality and systems and overall supply chains are considered. Similarly, we're way behind like US or even European Union to that matter. So I think because of those structural issues, life of people seems to be a little bit much more seamless, easier, systematic in the US as compared to India, and hence you would see a lot of anxiety, unrest in the India as opposed to here in the US, because people don't have to toil for daily bread. Environment is still kind of good, pollution is kind of non-existent, but these things are also like causing catastrophe in India, whether it is heat in Delhi for 50 degrees centigrade, or flash floods and constant floods that are battering the whole of North India and Gangetic plains, or floods in like Bangalore or any city for that matter you can take, right? So those are kind of very much man-made disasters, I would say, in India, because there is a complete, uh, apathy on the civic authorities in India. They don't maintain the drains, they don't clean up the river waters, they don't maintain the pollution levels, and at the end of the day, someday or the other, nature will bite back and will take what it is rightfully its, right? In the US, on the other hand, the lakes, the water, etc., are pristine, clear. Uh, we do have traffic jam problems here as well, but there are specific times when the traffic jam happens. But the traffic jam in the US will be normal traffic in India. Like I'll have to give this as an example, because cars will still maintain distance. People will not crisscross your lanes and things like that. In India, when a traffic jam happens, you can't even move your car or like move here and there because it's like bumper to bumper traffic. You're stuck. That's not the case here in the US, right? Even though we still get traffic jams here as well. So all in all, the message I wanted to share today, July 4th, is that it's Independence Day of the US. It's a strong economy. It's a land of opportunities. It has invited, immigrants with open arms. Like I, being Indian, like from an Indian origin, present here in the US, I feel completely secure. My freedoms and my, first right amendments are also intact. Um, we are free to pursue anything, do anything as we want, and in general, government doesn't like bother you here too much here in the US. So I can criticize the US government. Nobody's going to come behind me. It is same there in India as well. And here people are very accessible. Like I can go to my local council members and talk to them, interact with them. So here this belongingness of community and local level leadership and partnership is very much required in the US, and it is promoted. Unfortunately, in India, we don't even know who are local MLAs or who is the council members and how to get work done through them, etc. That's the problematic thing in India. Um, at the end of the day, as I said, politics is bad, equally bad here in the US and in India. There is literally no difference. Difference is more in semantics and structure and how they do it. But at the end of the day, it's kind of same, corruption, competition, name calling. It happens here as well. One fundamental difference that I see, that at least in the US, right, the local bodies will get your road constructed. Uh, they will make sure that the houses that are being built or the commercial residences that are coming across there as per code, etc. So what happens with all those kind of policies is that you do not see mushrooming growth of illegal structures and cities that are like completely bad. Things happen systematically here in the US. In India, unfortunately, all these development, etc., happen randomly anywhere. There is no thought to long-term surveys and long-term like city planning and things like that. So even in the future, for years to come, we will have impact, I think, of these kind of things in India. Whereas in the US, even with like new immigration, as more people embrace US and they come and basically start settling in the US, they'll start embracing the US values, which are freedom and liberty and pursuit of happiness, which is what people basically continue to follow here in the US. So, on this note, I'll wrap up today's session. I hope you all enjoy your 4th of July. It's a long weekend here in the US. Many people have taken holiday for Friday, and if you combine today, Thursday as well, then it's basically essentially like 4 days of holidays. So, okay, so let me read one question. I got a message here. So, Clear Winner has written, do we need to bring US companies to India to develop infrastructure as we don't have quality? Well, clear winner, you are right. In one way, you see pretty much all US companies are already in India, like whether it is Unilever, whether it is PNG and CPG and retail, whether you have Walmart or Flipkart, whether all our startups that are there in India are all funded by US companies, be it Tiger Global or Nexus Venture Partners or um, any other such kind of companies. So in a sense, I would say you have a lot of US companies like GE or even Siemens, which is more kind of German company, not US company. But what I meant to say was, you already have a lot of MNCs in India that are operating. I think it is more about in India, whenever the contract work is being done, right, like especially the road development, maintenance of wells and drains, etc. They give those kind of contracts to local like contractors, right, within India, because generally, the work done by MNCs, they charge very high premium, and government organizations in India tend to like work through bribes, right? They'll give the contract to their own people or the one who pays them the highest bribe, and once that bribe is given, that kind of shoddy work is done basically, right? As you see in the construction of like railways or even the bridges or even the roads or drains and things along those lines. So yeah, I think if these MNC companies would start taking those tenders as well, those small projects, I think at least they can maintain the quality, and maybe we will have the good infrastructure. uh, I think it's not about the quality that the Indian companies such as L&T and Tata, and even Reliance or even Ambani's companies do a lot of infrastructure work, right? GMR and all. It's just that the intent of like having the right intent is more important. I think expertise wise, I think even Indian companies can deliver those kind of projects. It's about the intent and monitoring, right? So the government organizations should be the ones who should monitor them, put fines if certain quality standards are not being met. So if they do that, I think even the Indian companies can scale up and do the good work, because fact of the matter is that all these Indian companies will bag orders in Australia and UK and Europe, etc., and build infrastructure for these companies as well. So whether it is GMR, whether it is L&T, Tata, Reliance, etc., they all work internationally. So if they are able to deliver projects internationally, they can definitely do that in India as well. So I would say it is more question about the intent and monitoring of these projects rather than we need to bring in the MNCs to do this work. So we should go both the routes, like bring in the MNCs to come and work, as well as make sure that you have such checks and balances that whenever certain work is being done, then it has to be monitored, and then fines and things like that should be levied if it is not up to the mark. Okay, the next question. Uh, Small town infrastructure is really bad. Yes, you are right, because small towns do not have a lot of money, and hence they would give these contracts to just their known relatives or known companies, and they get kickbacks, right? So I know in some of the road construction work, etc., they will even give 25 to 30% as kickback. So assume that you only win the project when your bid is the lowest, right? So as it is, your margins will be super thin, out of which 25 to 30% you are going to give back as kickbacks. Then you have hardly any money left to actually work upon the quality of the project. So that's a big problem in India, and I just don't know like if there is any intent by any government to solve for it. This is true whether you go to South India like Bangalore or other places, or you go to Delhi or Haryana or UP. Everywhere it is the same situation, or even Bombay, like whichever place you go, it's the same poor infrastructure everywhere. Like for instance, like we have had heavy rains in Delhi, right? Delhi and North India. You can see that whole of Ayodhya, a lot of places in Delhi, etc. They were just flown away in the flash floods, and it kind of opens up like, is this the kind of infrastructure that India has built? That in the first monsoon rain itself, everything was washed out. I will definitely give one point though, that this time around, uh, the rains that we saw in Delhi were very torrential. They were extremely heavy, never seen in last, I think, several decades, if not years, and hence it's a little bit of like a tragedy of sorts. But then even Dubai saw very heavy rains, right, first in a time, but they were very quick in like fixing their stuff in like 2 days, and coming out with policy that if tomorrow something like that has to happen, what are some of the safeguards they are going to make. In India, unfortunately, none of our political leaders learn anything. Year after year, something or the other keeps happening, and we keep doing the same thing again, expecting some other result will come. So that's the problem in India. Actually, we don't learn anything from our episodes or any kind of environmental destruction that is happening across the board. So you have other question, clear winner. What are your thoughts about cleaning India as Swachh Bharat hasn't worked? Yeah, you are right. So Swachh Bharat was a very big campaign started almost 10 years ago by Mr. Modi, and it seemed like a great initiative. But it turns out that it's more like photo opportunity, like all the political party members, etc., just had a broom in their hand. In fact, AAP also has their symbol as jhadu, right? And to clean up the politics. But after 10 years, we all know like none of these politicians are serious about the cleanliness. I think government should do like private public partnership, and they should make small pockets. So for instance, like in Bangalore, there are so many companies out there. If local governments basically partner with these companies and say, at least in your neighborhood, like wherever that company is there, they can give them like a catchment area of like one kilometer, or like a radius of like maybe 500 meters or something, that you will have to monitor all these sweepers and cleanliness people that come, and make sure that they do their work clearly, and if anything, then report back to the government that work was not done, etc. I think something along those lines has to be done, because government is very poor in monitoring and feedback. So they need constant like push, that somebody else should be monitoring and providing the feedback to them that the work has been done or not. Or even it will be great that if they divide the work, that some work will be done by private parties and some work will be done by the government parties. Maybe government is not able to like manage every society or every locality. So I think in certain places, resident welfare associations that are there for different colonies, they can partner up with the governments, and some places where there are corporates, they can partner up with the governments in a public private partnership. to basically focus on cleanliness, decluttering, waste management of different localities. And I think it has to be done at the local level to be, so have a like a national policy, but execution implementation should be at the local level. That's the way I think if they implement it, there is a lot of things that we can achieve across India. Yeah. um, I'm happy to answer any further questions that you may have, clear winner or anyone else who is listening onto this podcast. Feel free to ask those questions. Happy to answer them for you. But if there are none, then I'll wrap up today's session. And once again, thank you all. If you like this session, do like it, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Do write and let me know if there are any other questions or any other topics that you would like for me to discuss in our subsequent podcast. Till then, take care, have a nice day, and we'll talk to you soon. Uh, Take care.